Oh, is it? I was
It was
reading...
like May last year. Anyway, so I think that's why. So technically, it was when the Queen clearly wasn't well in the early part of last year. He stood in for her.
Oh, he stood in because she was poorly.
He stood in because she was ill, which is why he read that. And then she came back. Then it's been 18 months. So it's not always at exactly the same time of the year. So there we are. Well, a bit later on, as they're making their way, as Val was discussing, making their way into the robing rooms to get all their gear on before he reads out the speech. This afternoon, there'll be a break then. And this afternoon, all the MPs converge in the House of Commons to debate the Loyal Address, and that will be proposed by the Conservative MP, Robert Goodwill, the MP for Scarborough and Whitby. Now, traditionally, there's a sort of a young upstart MP and a grandee who deliver their speech. It's supposed to be funny. Here, in fact, is a clip of a young up-and-comer from 2014, Penny Mordaunt, seconding the humble address.
I have benefited from some excellent training by the Royal Navy, but on one occasion I felt it was not as bespoke as it might have been. Fascinating though it was,
Goodwill match that. I asked him how he found out he's going to be making this big speech.
It's the chief whip who approached me, sent me a WhatsApp message saying, "Can you call and see me urgently?" Which I couldn't do because I was chairing my select committee, but I bumped into him later in the evening and he said, "Oh, well, we've chosen you to be one of the two members who propose and second the Loyal Address." And traditionally it's an old codger and a young upstart, and I'm the old codger officially.
So what do you have to do? What are the expectations on you?
I think it's to break the ice before the serious business of debating the King's speech. And I've been looking through a few of the previous speeches, and I'm hoping mine will be mildly amusing. Certainly if I was Boris Johnson or Liz Truss or Keir Starmer or even Rishi Sunak, I'd be a little bit worried what I might say.
Can you give us any hint, just between you and me, Robert? Give us a flavour of one of your gags.
Oh, I think you're going to have to wait for it, but Yorkshire will feature very widely, and not least, of course, the most famous currently member of Parliament from Yorkshire, of course, which is the Prime Minister. So I will be just mentioning that Yorkshire maybe once or twice, and of course the Speaker comes from Lancashire, so nobody's perfect, but I'll try to break it to him gently.
Talking of Yorkshire, David Davies, another Yorkshire MP, of course, he told Times Radio, "It's the speech I'd hate to have to give. It has to be funny, political, and nod to the local area." Is it a speech that you hate the prospect of doing, but you just couldn't say no to?
Well, I've got it here.
I almost saw that on the Zoom then. There we are.
No, I mean, I'd sort of, there's some real stories from knocking on doors in elections and experiences I've had, and some very nice things about my constituency. I mean, Scarborough and Whitby has got to be the most wonderful constituency in the whole country. You know, it's in Yorkshire. It's got two wonderful resorts. It's got the North Yorkshire Moors. And we've also got a lot of economic development. We're famous as the home of the McCann oven chip, which was invented then. Not only that, I think the country's most famous and favourite chip, but also actually one of the reasons why we're closing so many fire stations, because there's not many chip pan fires now, which directly have contributed to fire safety by people having oven chips rather than lots of chip pans put on stoves late at night, and then the person in the house falls asleep on the sofa and the chip pan catches fire. And of course, we're also the biggest mining constituency in the country now, with the massive Anglo-American £4 billion investment. They're spending £1 million a day digging into the ground just outside Whitby to access this wonderful new fertilizer product called polyhalite.
Oh, wow. I feel like I've learned a lot, and people learn a lot when they listen to your speech a bit later on. We should talk about, you're going to smuggle anything into your speech. Penny Mordaunt, of course, now in the cabinet, leader of the House of Commons, she'll be right there on the front bench playing a key role in the King's speech debate. When she was one of these new high flyers, rising stars you talked about. She
was a young upstart at that point.
She was a young upstart, exactly. She delivered a speech seconding the Loyal Address back in 2014, and packed a speech with references. I mean, there's no easy way to say this, to testicles. Talked a lot about hen and cock welfare. Are you going to try anything like that? Smuggling anything in as a bet?
I won't even mention Ed balls, never mind anything else.
Well, very best of luck with it, Robert. I know you've got a busy day ahead. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. No pressure at all.
Scarborough MP Robert Goodwill, thanks for joining us on Times Radio.
There we are. Now we are live on the Times Radio YouTube channel. If you want to watch the King's speech along, Kate McCann, Times Radio's political editor, is here with me in the studio as well. Up next, we're going to be joined by the King of Impressions. John Coleshaw joins us next on Times Radio.
Kate Borsay, tonight from 8 on Times Radio.
1 month on from the Hamas terror attack.
Very good morning to you. It's Matt Chorley on Times Radio on King's Speech Day. Black Rod is on the move. No, the Commons Speaker, I think, is on the move. Is that Sergeant at Arms?
Sergeant at Arms is on the move.
Thanks very much, Kate McCann.
Right.
Identify. Oh, yeah, the Mason. There we are, the Mason. There's Commons Speaker. There he is, heading towards the Commons, and they'll all sit down in the Commons, and then Black Rod will come and knock on the door afterwards. Now, obviously, it's a big day for the King, and I'm absolutely delighted to say we are now joined live here on Times Radio by the King. Hello.
Yes, hello. I'm very delighted to speak to you in order to just get oneself ready for this splendid occasion.
Well, I'm glad you managed to get a signal on Zoom in the robing room. How are you feeling? You pumped up?
Yes, I think so. I did ask, was all of this royal regalia absolutely necessary? I was hoping perhaps just to wear some comfortable track pants and a pair of Crocs, and maybe some other items of athleisure. But no, they've insisted very much on the royal regalia. So, well, fine. I suppose it looks correct.
Now, Your Majesty, some of our listeners have been sending in, because obviously the speech is actually written by the government rather than by the King. So we asked our listeners to send in some suggestions. They could write one line into the speech today. What would it be? And I think you've got a few of them to share with us.
I certainly do, and there are some very perspicacious suggestions indeed, which, I mean, they say there may not be too many surprises in the King's speech that I must deliver today, so this might be the time just to get a few of them in. So let's see if any of these appeal. My government will see to it that those who have video conferences in public without headphones shall have 45-day-old custard poured over their heads. My government will tax all misused apostrophes, which will pay for 3,000 new schools across England and Wales. A greater tax shall be levied on those individuals who point out incorrect apostrophes the whole time. There's more of these if we have time.
Yes, we'll have a couple more, John. John, I'm sorry, Your Majesty.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sir Matt. My government will seek to return curly whirlies, wagon wheels, Jaffa cakes, and crisp packets to their 1972 size.
Very good. That'll be very popular.
And let me see. Yes, those who have loud conversations into mobile phones so that the entire train carriage can hear. Well, such lack of awareness shall see that these individuals have their faces pushed into the nearest rice pudding. So I recommend this.
These are all. Do you think they go down well, Kate? Are these the sort of policies that would turn things around for Rishi Sunak?
There's a lot of liquid-based desserts going on. We've got custard, we've got rice pudding, and I approve of both wholeheartedly.
Yeah, very much so. Now, let's turn our attention now to the impressionist John Coleshaw. John, we've spoken a few times about since the king's arrival on the scene, as it were. Have you noticed any change in the way he's going about himself and speaking since he's become king?
I think yes, just a little more stately. There's a little element of formality there, and that sense of being quite a chatty raconteur and so on, and that sort of understated way. I think that's sort of worked in very charmingly. So yes, there is a sort of a mellowing, and the gravitas just upped that little bit that would come with kingliness. The evolution is visible.
And presumably you are doing him all the time now, when having probably slightly dropped out of your repertoire over the years?
Yes, if impersonation characters were the pop charts, he may have been holding steady there at number 12, but he's in the top 3 now.
Well, thank you very much, John. It's lovely to have you here for all state occasions. Always improved by having John Coleshaw. John, lovely to speak to you.
Yeah, and you, Matt. All the very best. Thank you.
And thank you for sending all of your suggestions of what should be in the King's speech. It's coming up in 2 or 3 minutes' time. It's like a minute. It is clearly, but it's literally a military operation, this, Kate.
Yeah, it's minute by minute. In fact, the timings are incredibly precise. You've got timings at 11:12, 11:13, 11:15. So we are at the point in which the King and the Queen are processing down the chamber, the royal chamber, in the Royal Gallery. And this is really interesting, actually, because you can get a ticket. There's a ballot for tickets for this particular place, and journalists can go in there, so can peers, anybody who works in Parliament, essentially, anybody who's security checked. But it's also where lots of peeresses now have to sit, because back in the day they were allowed to sit in the chamber of the House of Lords, but they were so determined to sit there that they actually crowded out MPs.
So this is wives of peers rather than
it is exactly
female
that,
peers. Yeah,
and they have the right to attend the King's speech.
Now, I think this is the moment that Val Lowe was talking about. They are going through 2 separate doors, so they would arrive. So the King in one and the Queen in the other. And this is I think we can hear, well, to some extent, just how quiet. This is the live feed from the House of Lords. The King wearing the imperial crown, making his way past the cap of maintenance and up onto the dais.
Do you know how much that crown weighs? 1.3 kilograms.
What is, yes.
3,000 precious stones in that crown.
It's a heavy old thing. And all the page boys sort of rearranging the train. I remember a few years. It might have been a year that I was sitting in the actual press gallery. That one of them
Somebody
fainted.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge state occasion, and it's absolutely silent in there. It's also incredibly warm. It's packed to the rafters. It's not a huge space, the House of Lords, so it's unsurprising, really.
And a big moment for him. It was last year when he delivered the Queen's speech on behalf of the Queen. He was sitting there. He was on the consort's throne. They got the crown there, and he sort of looked at one point across, perhaps thinking about his mother and her absence.
Yeah,
but a big moment for him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a big moment. What we're seeing now, this stage, is Black Rod. We may be able to actually hear if we just get that footage.
We might get the banging.
My
in a minute.
lords, pray be seated.
Oh, that's the King there telling members of the House of Lords so they can sit down before.
But here's the moment.
Yes, the
Black Rod is banging on the door of the Commons. Here we go.
So I can't remember. There's a guy with the white stick has just sent Black Rod off down towards the House of Commons.
We're a bit behind, are we?
So this tradition dates back a long time to the is it January 1642, when King Charles I entered the House of Commons with soldiers to try and arrest 5 members whom he accused of treason, to try and deliver the separation, if you like, between Commons and Lords. And here we are. So they are locking the door in the House of Commons.
That's the MPs shouting, and then we get the bang.
black rod there, basically
There we
saying,
go.
"Let
That was
me
the
in,"
bang.
on behalf of the monarch, and therefore the Commons allowing the monarch.
Black Rod!
There we are. There indeed is black rod. Sarah Clark being allowed into the Commons to summon MPs to then make their way down to the chamber of the House of Lords, where they'll hear the King officially
Mr. Speaker,
deliver.
the King commands this honourable House to attend His Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
Mercifully spared the amusing joke made by Dennis Skinner over the years. Dennis Skinner, the long-standing veteran Labour MP for Bolsover, used to always use that moment to say something hilarious. So Lindsay Hoyle, first one up and out of his chair, is the Commons Speaker to follow the mace. The mace being carried. Obviously, the mace normally sits in the House of Commons as a symbol of the authority of the monarch. And then this is the point, Kate. This is what for sort of political nerds. This is the point where we watch opposition politicians making nervous, awkward conversation with each other. So Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak, then Angela Rayner and Oliver Dowden, sort of each of them pairing up with their opponents. Jeremy Hunt and Rachel Reeves. And they sort of have to walk along making conversation as they head down to the House of Lords. There's definitely one year when Gordon Brown asked sort of David Cameron a very serious conversation.
Do you want to know something interesting
Go
about
on.
this? So obviously what we've just seen, that spectacle, the reason why, the reported reason why Black Rod knocks on the door is to suggest that the Commons is more powerful than the monarch. So the door is supposed to be slammed in the face and then reopened to suggest that the Commons is, you know, more important. And as you said, it goes back to a certain time. But actually, historians looked into it and they found that this practice has been happening far longer than that. And it's actually not about that at all. It's more just about trying to figure out who was on the other side of the door. And it's less ceremonial than we may originally have thought. It's always been thought to have been about the Commons showing it was more powerful. But interestingly, something that does remain is when they do walk down to the House of Lords, all of the MPs, they dawdle and they have a joke and a laugh, which is to suggest that the Commons is more important, and they will not be dragged
And they don't rush.
to the Lords because
Exactly.
the Lords is not as powerful as the Commons.
So we can see MPs there. Keir Starmer sort of smiling and making faces at people around the in the Lords chamber. Now, this is the big moment for the Lord Chancellor, the Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk. So he's the one who takes the gracious speech from the purse and on bended knee will hand it to the King. And in fact, I think there's some suggestion that he is going to walk backwards.
So this is really... So apparently, until 1998, it was expected that that person, the Lord Chancellor, would walk backwards. In 1998, they decided to give people the opportunity to walk forwards.
Very new Labour and modern and...
Yes, well, they thought it was a bit risky, and he is apparently going to go back to tradition and walk backwards. But remember, he's not wearing a suit. Well, he will be underneath, but he's wearing very long robes, so it's not an easy process for him. It's going to be quite a moment, I think, if he does decide to do that.
So things are a bit backed up. We've got lots of MPs still in the Commons chamber trying to get down to the Lords. So there is the Lord Chancellor, Alex Chalk, on bended knee, hands over the speech, and then, yes, does step backwards, as promised. So now we can go live to the House of Lords to hear for the first time in 70 years, the King's speech.
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, it is mindful of the legacy of service and devotion to this country set by my beloved mother, the late Queen, that I deliver this, the first King's speech in over 70 years. The impact of COVID and the war in Ukraine have created significant long-term challenges for the United Kingdom. That is why my government's priority is to make the difficult but necessary long-term decisions to change this country for the better. My minister's focus is on increasing economic growth and safeguarding the health and security of the British people for generations to come. My government will continue to take action to bring down inflation, to ease the cost of living for families and help businesses fund new jobs and investment. My ministers will support the Bank of England to return inflation to target by taking responsible decisions on spending and borrowing. These decisions will help household finances, reduce public sector debt, and safeguard the financial security of the country. Legislation will be introduced to strengthen the United Kingdom's energy security and reduce reliance on volatile international energy markets and hostile foreign regimes. This bill will support the future licensing of new oil and gas fields, helping the country to transition to net zero by 2050 without adding undue burdens on households. Alongside this, my ministers will seek to attract record levels of investment in renewable energy sources and reform grid connections, building on the United Kingdom's track record of decarbonising faster than other G7 economies. My government will invest in Network North to deliver faster and more reliable journeys between and within the cities and towns of the North and Midlands, prioritising improving the journeys that people make most often. My ministers will strengthen education for the long term. Steps will be taken to ensure young people have the knowledge and skills to succeed through the introduction of the Advanced British Standard that will bring technical and academic routes into a single qualification. Proposals will be implemented to reduce the number of young people studying poor quality university degrees and increase the number undertaking high quality apprenticeships. My ministers will take steps to make the economy more competitive, taking advantage of freedoms afforded by the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union. A bill will be brought forward to promote trade and investment with economies in the fastest growing region in the world. My ministers will continue to negotiate trade agreements with dynamic economies, delivering jobs and growth in the United Kingdom. My ministers will introduce new legal frameworks to support the safe commercial development of emerging industries, such as self-driving vehicles, introduce new competition rules for digital markets, and encourage innovation in technologies such as machine learning. Legislation will be brought forward to support the creative industries and protect public interest journalism. Proposals will be published to reform welfare and support more people into work. My government will promote the integrity of the Union and strengthen the social fabric of the United Kingdom. Working with NHS England, my government will deliver its plans to cut waiting lists and transform the long-term workforce of the National Health Service. This will include delivering on the NHS Workforce Plan, the first long-term plan to train the doctors and nurses the country needs, and minimum service levels to prevent strikes from undermining patient safety. Record levels of investment are expanding and transforming mental health services to ensure more people can access the support they need. My government will introduce legislation to create a smoke-free generation by restricting the sale of tobacco so that children currently aged 14 or younger can never be sold cigarettes, and restricting the sale and marketing of e-cigarettes to children. My ministers will bring forward a bill to reform the housing market by making it cheaper and easier for leaseholders to purchase their freehold and tackling the exploitation of millions of homeowners through punitive service charges. Renters will benefit from stronger security of tenure and better value, while landlords will benefit from reforms to provide certainty that they can regain their properties when needed. My government will deliver a long-term plan to regenerate towns and put local people in control of their future. Legislation will be brought forward to safeguard the future of football clubs for the benefit of communities and fans. A bill will be introduced to deal with the scourge of unlicensed pedicabs in London. My government is committed to tackling anti-Semitism and ensuring that the Holocaust is never forgotten. A bill will progress the construction of a National Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre in Victoria Tower Gardens. My government will act to keep communities safe from crime, antisocial behaviour, terrorism and illegal migration. A bill will be brought forward to ensure tougher sentences for the most serious offenders and increase the confidence of victims. My ministers will introduce legislation to empower police forces and the criminal justice system to prevent new or complex crimes, such as digital-enabled crime and child sexual abuse, including grooming. At a time when threats to national security are changing rapidly due to new technology, my ministers will give the security and intelligence services the powers they need and will strengthen independent judicial oversight. Legislation will be introduced to protect public premises from terrorism in light of the Manchester Arena attack. My government will deliver on the Illegal Migration Act passed earlier this year and on international agreements to stop dangerous and illegal channel crossings and ensure it is the government, not criminal gangs, who decides who comes to this country. My government will continue to champion security around the world, to invest in our gallant armed forces, and to support veterans to whom so much is owed. My ministers will work closely with international partners to support Ukraine, strengthen NATO, and address the most pressing security challenges. This includes the consequences of the barbaric acts of terrorism against the people of Israel, facilitating humanitarian support into Gaza, and supporting the cause of peace and stability in the Middle East. My government will continue to lead action on tackling climate change and biodiversity loss, support developing countries with their energy transition, and hold other countries to their environmental commitments. The United Kingdom will continue to lead international discussions to ensure that artificial intelligence is developed safely. My government will host the Global Investment Summit, the European Political Community, and the Energy Conference, leading global conversations on the United Kingdom's most pressing challenges. I look forward to welcoming His Excellency the President of the Republic of Korea and Mrs. Kim Keon-hee for a state visit later this month. My government will, in all respects, seek to make long-term decisions in the interests of future generations. My ministers will address inflation and the drivers of low growth over demands for greater spending or borrowing. My ministers will put the security of communities and the nation ahead of the rights of those who endanger it. By taking these long-term decisions, my government will change this country and build a better future. Members of the House of Commons, estimates for the public services will be laid before you. My lords and members of the House of Commons, other measures will be laid before you. I pray that the blessing of Almighty God may rest upon your counsels.
That was the King delivering the first King's speech for more than 70 years, beginning actually reflecting on that, talking about paying tribute to the legacy of service and devotion of his mother, the late Queen, before setting out details of what 20 bills, one draft bill. Kate McCann, what stands out for you? What's the overall theme and message that Rishi Sunak's trying to convey here?
Well, we know that what the Prime Minister wants is to suggest to people that his government is going to govern for the long term, make long-term strategic decisions for the better of people's lives. And there were a couple of moments in that speech where that was referenced, the idea that net zero investment is important and the government is committed to 2050, but not to add undue burdens onto households. Now, you know, there will be some elements of that speech that the King personally will have found very difficult to...
He was inscrutable, though.
He was.
He did not grimace at any point. He delivered it as he was supposed to.
He didn't. And it is always strange, isn't it, hearing the King talk in that way, because, of course, the King is not allowed really to have those political opinions. We know that as Prince Charles, he did, definitely. There was a reference in there to Network North, the new rail plan, which, you know, some people may snigger at that because it was meant to be HS2. It was scaled back and the investment was spread out across the country. And there were another couple of things that we expected in there. References, extensive references actually to the NHS, the importance of that, but also to terrorism and crime. And I think we are going to see from the Prime Minister a speech which will indicate that crime, justice and keeping people safe will be at the heart of what the government is aiming at here.
Kate, thanks for that. Kate McCann, Times Radio's political editor. Matt Chorley on Times Radio, bringing you coverage of the King's speech as the King and Queen make their way now out of the House of Lords chamber and down through the Royal Gallery. The MPs make their way back to the House of Commons. Well, the Commons will be suspended until 2:30. They'll actually begin debating this. But up next, we're going to speak to a Conservative MP and a member of the House of Lords to get their take on a couple of the specifics in this speech. We'll do that next on Times Radio.
Mariella Frostrup, Monday to Thursday afternoons from 1 on Times Radio with Sky Glass.